somewhere around that 14 to 16 bracket, you made a non-profit then to help students learn from students, right?
True.
And you were still in school. And then you finished school and you're still running it now from all this distance.
Yes, and it's still running now.
And it's still running, and it became the Times of India Best NGO last year.
2015, that was a Times Foundation award, and 2016 it was a Yuva Chetana award. So it's like two. One was state level award and one was national level award.
Bro, you humble the fuck out of me. I'm so proud to be talking to you. You've no idea.
That's
Okay. What's up, y'all? I am here with Sai Suhas Kopparapu. He's a dear friend from back in India. He also goes to Columbia. I actually met him on campus during my NSAB. And I feel like he has one of the most interesting stories that y'all need to hear. He's here. High five, Suhas. How you doing?
High five.
Oh, dude, that was not proper.
Okay.
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing good. What about you?
I'm
How are
doing
you
pretty
doing?
well, man. I'm doing pretty well. I like your accent. When did you come up with this accent?
So
I want to hear your authentic South Indian accent. That's what I want. That's what I want people to hear.
This was like authentic South Indian. In South India, people
nah.
speak good English.
Hey, by
I
the
mean,
way, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they speak good English in South India compared to North. That's
Oh,
what
for
I
sure,
feel.
for sure, man. That was a sting.
And are you from North?
I am from the north part of
Okay.
India. I am from New Delhi, just like south of New Delhi.
Okay.
I mean, you know all of that. You've been home, but he's met everybody in my family. We're pretty much in the process of getting ourselves married in an arranged fashion. You know how we do it in India. It's like a forced monogamy kind of a model. Anyway, Suhas, are you now a sophomore at GS?
Yes, I'm a sophomore at GS. I am studying economics.
Or you study economics?
Yeah, and I'm planning to study computer science too. They're two different poles, but I'm planning to major in both of them.
Also, you'll do a double major in economics and computer science.
Yeah, but as time goes on, I don't know whether I'll be majoring in both or I'll be able to. But I am willing.
That's
to
the
major.
plan. Like, that's the
plan,
general
yeah.
plan. I see that. That's quite interesting because I'm also very curious as to where that is coming from. And before we get into that, go ahead, take a minute or two, however long you want to take, and tell us about yourself. Tell us about your history. Tell where you're coming from. What's been up, stuff like that.
Okay, many questions.
Can
you break it down
For
please?
sure. Okay. Suhas has a little while processing information. it seems.
Okay.
So tell me about your past. Tell me about where you grew up. What did you do? Why is it that you're in GS? Like, what was your story before and after high school, or did you go to school? Stuff like that. You see what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, many questions, but this time I'm processing it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Funny guy.
Okay, so I was for first 10 years of my life,
Mhm.
I was in Mumbai,
Right.
basically Navi Mumbai,
Mhm.
and I moved to Bangalore when my dad got into. He transferred to Bangalore International Airport, so I moved to Bangalore then, and then my rest of my other 10 years were in Bangalore,
Mhm.
and I was studying in the school called Ryan International School.
Oh yeah,
in
that's a very famous school chain in India.
Yeah, but then I didn't like it so much, but it was okay. It exposed me to different cultures and everything.
Right.
And then I moved to National Public School in Bangalore. That was a pretty academic oriented school.
Right.
And then after my 12th grade,
Uh-huh.
I had around 2 years of gap.
Oh,
I started
okay.
a non-profit back in 9th standard. Which
You started a non-profit back in ninth standard.
9th standard. Okay, let me not say like I started a non-profit.
Uh-huh.
Let me say I started like a student club first.
Uh-huh.
Like in 9th when I was, in 9th, okay, maybe. I just started a student club which is into more education, like the way you teach. I didn't like the way the Indian educational system actually works, It's like teacher comes and she teaches on blackboard and things like that. So I didn't like the way she teaches and
Right.
everything. So I mean, I didn't like the way the teaching process worked.
Mhm.
So I thought, how will it be if a student teaches other student? What do you think?
What do I think about that?
Yeah, what do you think when you teach me or I teach you the portions and everything other than professor coming and teaching you? Our wavelength will match, right?
No, I feel like I would have less faith in what I'm being taught.
Okay.
Because I mean, like, if a professor, like, he's being paid $100,000 a month, I don't even know what their salaries are, but that
Okay.
guy's being paid. So, like, but I see what you mean. Like, there is more of the wavelength angle that you mentioned. It's like, there is more of a connect when you have somebody your age explaining stuff to you. You feel like you are on the same playing field, if anything else. Yeah, I follow that. Yeah.
But what? Okay, you said you won't have faith. That's actually a good point. So
Mm-hmm.
even I had the same comment like when I said I want like students teaching other students.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought of supplementing this. Of course, we have teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and then after school, like what if students develop their own research prototypes, go
Mm-hmm.
and teach the students and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
like supplementing the education system. So that's what I wanted like a student club to be. Like
Mm-hmm.
after school, like we'll go and teach like the whole students of my class like what this research projects, and like we develop our own researches and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of did like that in a vague model.
Mm-hmm.
But now last year we got Times of India's best non-profit award of the year.
So wait, hold on. This is just like way too much for me to even. I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like
so
I'm
this is
dumb too. I feel like I'm dumb too. But no, let me get that straight. So you started a student club in ninth grade where you were essentially trying to incorporate a student-based education system where students would teach students, where students would come out with prototypes, and I wanted to get into what kind of prototypes you mean by that. Prototypes of students teaching students, and
No, it's prototype of a research module.
uh-huh.
Like we have many researches and many applications, right?
Mhm.
Like how a car works or maybe how a solar power plant works.
Right.
The prototype of a solar power plant, like a model of a solar power plant, and if I go teach them to students, like practical experiments,
Uh-huh.
and I'm pretty sure students will understand in a
Better,
way,
like they
better
absorb
fashion,
better. Like I feel you. Now I also make sense of the fact that when you say that the education systems in India is a little bit of a problem because it's hyper theoretical. It's based on rote learning, like almost like a vomit model where you eat, digest, swallow whatever you've been taught, and then vomit it out on the exam, and that determines how you've learned. Instead of testing, almost like testing on the metric of understanding, testing on the metric of how much has the concept been absorbed. And I feel like the practical experiments that you mentioned help you do that. But then that student club in ninth grade, that's somewhere in 2010, I'm assuming.
It's 2012.
2012 you were in
Yeah.
ninth grade. You were in
2012, I was in ninth grade.
you were in ninth grade in 2012, bro.
Yes.
What?
2013, I was in 10th grade.
You finished school in 2015.
Yes. And then I have 2 years of gap. In 2017, I'm here.
I feel so useless right now. I finished my 12th grade in 2013. That's when I finished school.
Okay.
So you're like 2 years
And
younger.
why is that?
No, I mean, I was just like, I thought you would be like more my age, but okay.
Okay.
So that student club is still functioning back home.
It's registered as a non-profit now.
Now it's a non-profit.
Yeah, yeah.
So you evolved it, and you evolved it through school, and by the time you got out of school, it became a non-profit.
So 2012 to 2013, it was a student club,
Mhm.
and I could see many schools being interested in that model
Right.
to supplement their education system. Many schools around my school, like underprivileged schools and things like that. And then we thought we should actually make it like a non-profit. So in 2013,
2013
November.
2013 November. That's
We
when you were in
registered.
10th grade.
That was when, yeah, that's when I was in 10th grade, and we registered that as a non-profit.
10th grade is like you were 14, 15, 16.
Sorry, but I don't remember that.
I mean,
Maybe,
yeah, maybe like somewhere around that 14 to 16 bracket. You made a non-profit then
Yeah.
to help students learn from students, right?
True.
And you were still in school, and then you finished school, and you're still running it now from all this distance,
Yes, and it's still running now.
and it's still running, and it became the Times of India best NGO last year.
It became in 2015.
Yeah, 2015. Oh, 2 years ago.
2
3 years ago.
2015, that was a Times Foundation award, and 2016 it was a Yuva Chetana award. So it's like two. One was state level award and one was national level.
Bro, you humble the fuck out of me. I'm so proud to be talking to you. You've no idea.
Oh, that's
Okay.
good. Thanks for.
So you did that up until you got here, and that became part of your GS story. Is that how it happened?
That's part of my GS story, and that's when I have 2 years of gap. But actually, that is actually 2 years of gap. But there's one more part to it.
Mm-hmm.
After taking 1 year break, I actually applied to Columbia Engineering School,
Mm-hmm.
like for their material science program, and
For
I
the
was-
what program?
Material science and engineering.
Material science.
Yeah,
Oh
material.
wow. Okay, I didn't know they had that.
Yeah, and I was waitlisted. I
Mhm.
was without. I was not that focused then. Like I just applied for the sake of applying, and then it's like of course you have peer pressure and everything. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So and then I was waitlisted. So next year I gave a serious try, and now I'm here.
So tell me more about the NGO. Like, what were the prototypes like? What was that around? Like, what is the idea there?
Okay, so I don't think we have launched my. I mean, I didn't mention my name yet. The non-profit's
No,
name.
I don't think you have. No.
Yeah, so it's called WISE, WISE.
Wise.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a workshop for innovations and scientific experiments. We collaborated with a German organization called Engineers Without Borders
Mm-hmm.
and Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. That's one of the best universities in Germany. So I was thinking like to once I initiated a collaboration between German organization and Indian organization, our plan was to install solar power plants across underprivileged schools. Because there's a problem in India, what most of the schools do is they steal the electricity from the poles instead of buying the electricity and things like that. Because
Schools.
schools do that.
Schools steal electricity.
Schools steal electricity.
Oh,
Of course,
wow.
they are underprivileged schools, and it's very hard to afford that also. Even electricity is very hard to afford for schools there. So the schools which Wise was working in, and then I realized, okay, they need electricity first than education.
Mm-hmm.
So we collaborated with German organizations to install solar power plants, which could actually provide electricity to them. And during this process, I realized they didn't have necessary bathing facilities also. Like they never had hot water. Just imagine in New York, such cold weather, and you're not provided hot water. How will you take bath then? So that's what was the problem in many schools.
Bro, if you don't have hot water, you take cold showers. If you have hot water, you take cold showers. That's how it happens. I've been taking cold showers for a year now.
But if it's too cold outside, what do
It's
you do?
no matter how cold it is, you take icy cold showers. That's I mean,
Okay.
it's one of my suggestions that I give to people very often is like you must definitely try having cold showers because it's like you can almost minimize your exposure while maximizing its effect. So it's like nobody's looking at me while I'm testing myself against adversity, while I'm entering into the cold water, right? And even after a year, I started doing it sometime last November, right? So it's almost been a year where I've consistently have had only the coldest showers that I can manage at any point. Initially it's very hard. Even today, like just walking under the water is very hard. But what I've observed over the last 1 year is I can have a very normal shower under cold water. And what it does to me, one, it instantly wakes me up. There is a bunch of physiological benefits that you have, like brown fat tissues growing, so that helps you insulate against cold weather. Your amygdala, your limbic brain, that's the best part of it. The amygdala, which is the limbic brain, which is the lizard brain, which is responsible for the fight or flight reaction that you have, right? The fear that you come across with the stress is all amygdala, is all cortisol pumping itself into this one small subcortical part called amygdala. You get to control that a lot. So one of the elements that I have when I talk about facing fear in general is a regularity of cold showers.
That's
If you
amazing.
if you manage to condition yourself to ice water, you can manage yourself to condition yourself to talking to beautiful women on streets.
Wow.
It really works in that parallel sense.
Okay, from now I'll shower with cold
My
water.
man
then.
needs beautiful
I'm
women.
gonna do that
Beautiful
now.
women. Hi, how are you? Anyway, so you were saying they didn't have like hot waters and hot water and stuff like that. So you
I mean, after you gave such a long speech, I don't think I want to continue.
no.
that. I really
It's like
don't
I'm
think
an alien in my own podcast. Okay.
Seriously.
Like, I don't know
Let's
what
just
to
stop
say.
there.
No.
Okay, I installed the solar power plants for electricity. Let's not talk about provision of hot water.
Mhm.
So, yeah, basically we install the hot water systems for providing hot and, clean water for the areas. Like once when you heat those waters using the hot water solar panels, you can actually get those clean.
Right.
I mean, water gets clean and you can supply it. It'd be like a safe drinking water.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, of course for shower, but
So you basically diversified from the education angle into like a sustainable development angle here, right?
I developed. But don't you think solar power plant is also like a research project for students when we are installing it?
Like how do you mean that?
Okay, when the installation of solar power plants going on. So I told you my nonprofit is more into educational based and developing prototypes. I considered solar power plant to be a large scale prototype for students to learn in a better way, and.
Are you saying that the supplementation of their education process is an education process by itself? Is that what it is?
I didn't get you. I'm sorry.
So what I mean is basically with the solar power plant, what you're doing is basically allowing them to study better, to be educated in better environments and stuff like that, right? You provide
Yeah, educated in a better environment, of course. But what we did was while we were installing solar power plants, we asked the school students to actually experience the way it's being installed, participate in the installation process and everything, and they learn the whole solar technology and renewable energy and things like that. So there were after
Oh.
classes and all those things that happen.
Hmm.
So yeah, maybe education system can work like that also, involve students in the building of application processes.
I feel
So
like, or on some level, I'm not entirely sure because I don't have a very good picture of how education system here in the United States, at least like the schooling system is. Like, I mean, I'm pretty aware of the college system and the university system, but in India, I feel like there's been such a fast grabbing of technology in
true.
education dissemination, right? There's just like e-learning and like screens and 3D models and all of that shit just coming up. I remember when I was in high school, there was just a chalk, a blackboard, and an old baggy teacher who did not want to teach what she was teaching because she was being heavily underpaid, who did not want to deal with students because the students were messing the fuck out of her life. One of the students is me, but like that's how it was, and I'm pretty proud. Like, even dude, I heard the most random shit. Apparently, my high school, is now sending out text messages to keep parents updated about their child's performance in schools. And it's so
Okay.
creepy. If my child did not
True.
show up to school, I'd receive a text saying, "Oh, your child was absent today." What the fuck? That's like NSA kind of, like CIA kind of private looking into my phone kind of shit, you know?
True.
Yeah.
And there are new apps coming out,
Uh-huh.
which I mean, schools are apparently liking this, and I don't like this at all.
Uh-huh.
The point is, like, did student attend that particular period, and what was his attention in that class, and how did he answer the quiz in that class?
But what are the metrics for understanding their attention spans? Like, how do you know?
I mean, so they ask you, like, okay, fine. They ask a random question, and a random student might be asked to answer that. Teacher might ask a random student to answer that question, and if he doesn't answer, in the app it shows he didn't answer, so maybe he doesn't have that attention process and things like that. I am completely against such apps coming out, and which holds student in it's kind
In
of
an accountability,
yeah,
yeah,
so
I mean,
strict. It's making like educational system so strict back in India, which I am completely against.
it's strict in a particular fashion too, and what that strictness is appeasing to is not essentially holistic, in my opinion, right? So it's like there's a couple of things to it when I think about it. One of the things is that you do not cultivate an individual through fear and a rigor that is based around control from the external, right? There is a control from the external. What you must teach an individual is to be able to discipline himself from within,
True.
right?
That's
So it's
that's
like
true. I
there's a
agree
lot
with
of problems. Like, we can go on. I'd be more than happy to discuss because you'd have like a very interesting take on what the problems in the Indian education system is and why there is
Yeah.
only why there's only a very few people who ever come out from the Indian education, like the classic Indian education system, where I mean the CBSE board and the ICSE board and whoever make it huge in the world as a whole, right? That's something we can touch upon. But I'm still very curious about the solar power panel. So like you sort of imagine it to be an educative experience where you're teaching them about renewable energy and and like and and just the installation of the solar panels, and then where did it go from there? Like, what happened since?
So what happened after that? So yeah, it's basically we planned the other solar power plant in
Mm-hmm.
Chennai and things like that, and we're increasing the number of schools being partnered to do this education system initiatives and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we of course have to involve many stakeholders like companies and big corporations to get
Fund you with,
sponsorships. Yeah, fund
yeah.
them under corporate social responsibility and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all like a lot of work that goes back in India, but we have a team that runs the whole non-profit, and yeah, something like that.
You know what's very interesting about corporate social responsibility in India? India drafted a new Companies Act in 2013. It's called the
Okay.
Companies Act of 2013. No surprises there. And I cannot, because I was a student of corporate law, so I remember all of this by heart. And there is a section under there which mandates corporate social responsibility, and we celebrate the mandation, the disciplinary nature. It says you have to invest 2% of your annual turnover to corporate social
True.
responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And we celebrate that fact. And that ties into what we were discussing about the education system before. It's like in India, for better or for worse, the idea that you must control the constituents of your the constituents of your population with an external mandate, with an
Got it.
with an external induction of discipline.
Got it.
Yes, it's sort of like a place where you do not trust people enough to do stuff by themselves, right?
True.
And that could be accurate. Like, I could be on board with that. I could see why people would not do it. Like, I come from an environment where people would not do if you'd ask them to do. But it either has to be that you recultivate your population where they understand that responsibility equates meaning. You are only there is only meaning to what you do when you take up responsibility.
I get it.
Because this to and fro where you do not trust things, right, it just polarizes us further away from institutions and administration. And I had a good enough time to analyze this when I was working in Punjab with the government this time, and like I was going around in offices and I saw the lack of trust is so evident. Like you have three different ID formalities to be checked before you are approved to be the person that you claim to be. You don't need three IDs. And then I mean, it's so annoying. You don't, but that's also because people cheat. And then when you understand that these people are capable of cheating, as the administration, you want to make sure. When you make hyper sure, you create a red tape, right? As soon as you create a red tape, there is ways around it further. It just polarizes us further. But what do you think about, like, what was your experience like working in the education sector in India?
I mean, working in education sector, it did open many doors for me and for the students whom my nonprofit is teaching. And I slowly got into policy initiatives, making policies and things like that for different nonprofits and things like that. So
right.
It did open many doors.
And like, what do you think about the constituents of the education system of India, like the school administrations, the government in that, like, how did that work out for you? Were they supportive of all of this? Did they have their own angle to stuff?
Okay, so we got many no's in this process than yeses and things like that. So many students didn't, many school administrations, they were initially like, no, we don't support this idea because we have our own efficient teachers and why should we encourage students to come and teach? But then I told it'll be like a supplement education and things like that. It's just after school. And schools were like, okay, but do you think, is it worth to do that and things? But unless we actually showed them the results that this is actually working, and the school students which we are going and teaching, they were like, yeah, we'll wait for 1-2 more hours to go through the research projects, and we also would like to participate in developing prototypes and things like that. That's when we got a yes from many schools.
You know what's very interesting?
Yeah.
Is how your idea kicked off, because I was in one of the underprivileged government schools in Punjab this summer, and I was speaking to the principal of that school, and I had a long ass conversation with him, and he mentioned something very similar. And because Punjab is going through a bad opioid crisis, there's people doing heroin and opiates and opioids everywhere, and people just dying, right? So I was questioning him how he tackled that, and he is a principal of 3 different schools. By virtue of the fact that there is a shortage of administrative educationists in Punjab, right? So he told me he did something which was very similar. You know what he did? As soon as students graduated from a school and they were stuck at home and they were more vulnerable to get attached to drugs and stuff like that, he would ask them to come and teach the younger students who were still in school.
Nice.
And he would make the teachers in turn teach these older students so they could apply to colleges and universities and right. So he created like he got the community together in a fashion where education became the primary focus. And he reported a 60% drop in drug usage, or even estimated drug usage, in that one village alone. Wow. Just by community gathering, right?
Wow. That's amazing.
That's amazing. And it's the same idea that you use in part, isn't it? Like where you get students to come and teach students, and then the students understand better, right? This seems to be taking off. Like now that I see it's beginning to form a pattern in front of my eyes. Then after school, like the later 2 years, you were continuously focusing on that, and you built a team to manage it, right?
Yes.
And how's the team? Like, what is the team made of? How many people do you have working for you?
So it's all volunteer-based system, and it's only the students in team. We don't have any person who's like professional, and we do have professionals who are in board of advisors and things like that. So we have around 200 volunteers from different colleges. So we signed an MOU with different colleges and how they should be supporting the education system and my non-profit, of course. And in return, what colleges get is they get like a community service certificate. Like every student needs a community service certificate for applying abroad education and things like that.
Right, they need something for the CV.
Yeah, so I have used this as the factor.
Bait, like a bait.
Yeah.
You're a manipulative man. You disgusting piece of shit. You're a manipulative man, huh?
So I have used this. mean, of course, it's like for
No, I mean,
students
for
also it's
sure.
an opportunity
For
for
sure,
them
there
to,
has to be. Yeah, we live in a
do
capitalist
community
systems,
service.
yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, even everybody should be involved in community service. I was like from past 5-6 years, I say my non-profit as more of serving to the society what I did using my non-profit. So
Yeah, that's great, bro. That's great.